Welcome back everybody to a new video. And today I will be tackling the Hot Wheels Custom Cougar. I'm not sure if this was one of the original Sweet 16 or not. I'm not really up with the history. I'm not really a Hot Wheels purist, so I just like the hobby. But I've already done two of these. I managed to grab, I think I got six in a box from an estate sale, and they turned out to be decent shape. One of them ended up being a donor for different things for multiple cars, but three of them were in really good shape, and all three of them happened to be, I believe this is the ice blue color. So I've restored two completely. I have another one that's being worked on. It needs some extra TLC, but this one was in good shape. You can see the interior parts, and the windshield is actually just scuffed up a little bit. So I went through the process of disassembling and dipping our body in the paint stripper. And I've drilled out my posts. I've got all my parts right there in my little plastic bin, along with the new wheels. And here I am removing the original wheels with the help of the Redline Shop tool to help straighten the axles out. Sometimes you can cut those wheels. I like to save the old ones. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them yet. I like to think there's a way to actually restore those as well. I haven't seen anybody really do it, but I'm going to try it. So I save the old wheels if they're, at least if they're intact. And here I am just using the Redline Shop hub tool or axle tool to straighten the axles out. So now that they're straight, I've dumped them in my CLR dip for a few minutes, and now I'm taking it out and stopping the process by throwing the base in some water just to stop that chemical reaction. And then it's a wire wheel and sandpaper to polish it up and get the base looking good. The CLR is I use it on all my metal bases. It's good for oxidation removal, and really does a great job. Even on, so I've had some really rough looking bases. I've had a couple of Lesney, the old Matchbox bases that were just really corroded, and it does a great job. You can see there it actually helps polish these up pretty well. You can use auto polishes and sit there and buff them out too, but I prefer the CLR way. So here is our body after it was stripped with just a quick buff with a wire wheel. So there's some pitting in there and some spots were really rough, but I buffed and polished this a few times just to get to a spot where I could really see some of the pitting. So there's, after a polish, I think that might have been polish number one, but you can see there's several different little variations on the roof and on the trunk deck that I'm going to need to do some electroplating on this. So using my homemade plating system here, I give the car a dip. There is a zinc anode in the mason jar, and positive charge goes to the anode, negative charge goes to the body. You actually have to pre-mix this first before you actually use it, to get some of that zinc to leach into the solution of its white vinegar. So I let this process go for a few minutes. This is a fresh batch, so it's pretty potent. And if you can see closely, you can see some bubbles happening there. And that is the process magically appearing before your eyes. I'm trying to hide some of the shadows so you can see it better, but it's working. And the characteristic of zinc, once it's when it's transferred onto another metal surface, is that it turns like a primer gray, a battleship primer gray. So we let this go for a few minutes, and this is what we end up with. There's a lot of work involved here. There's some sanding, polishing, buffing, and all worth it in the end, especially if you have a body that's really pitted and you need to fill up some of those spots. The transparency of the paint, you'll show any pitting through the paint, and it kind of takes away from all the work you've done. So if you can electroplate, even on a budget like I'm doing here, and spend some time with a little bit of sweat and elbow grease, sanding, buffing, polishing, you'll be very, very, very happy with the results. I mean, you're never going to get it back to factory. Although, if I would have gone through another electroplating dip on this after I got down to this point here, I may have gotten it to a brilliance that was really, showroom new. But I got it to a spot where I thought it was going to be passable. But it does involve, as you can see, a lot of handwork. You got to get in there and sand. I'm using 1000 and 2000 grit sandpaper, and I believe that is my 4000 grit Fred eraser to get into some of the tougher corners. It actually saves your fingers from getting into tight spots too. So some denatured alcohol to make sure I get all of the polish that was left over, and that needs a little bit more buff action and polish. So I polished it again, and I polished it until I was satisfied. So if you're going to take these on, just know that sometimes it's not going to be a quick process. If you electroplate, you may be in for, let's just say, an hour minimum of buffing, polishing, sanding, and till you get it where you need it. So I chose the ice blue Spectra color from the Redline shop to paint it. I do not show my paintwork. I may someday, but right now I do not. So here's our windshield. I managed to sand that out and buff it and polish it. That is the original glass or plastic. And that will take a nice dip in some future shine coming up shortly. Here is the fully polished base. This is in good shape. The CLR dip did it some justice, and the wire wheel. No big hunks or chips missing from it. So that'll be ready to go when we go back to assembly. I actually paint in the grill and the taillights, which is coming up shortly. But here is the future shine dip of the interior. It's funny too, on all 6 of those that I mentioned, the Cougars that I got in that box, this one had a brown interior, 2 of them had blue interiors, one of them had a white interior, and I believe that was the one that was roached the most. That was the car that really looked like it got run over by a monster truck. So the variations on these are pretty cool. I often wonder how they came up with, what interior was going to go into what car if they just grabbed them randomly and just assembled them. So I'm using the Candy 2.0 paint, or Candy 2.0 paint, a Createx to paint in the tail lights. It's a little transparent, so when you polish up the bases, um, and the transparency of the paint, that buffed up zinc base kind of shines through. It gives a little reflective property, but it also makes the lens look like a deep red. It's not a bright red like if you used a Sharpie or a paint pen. So I like to use this when I can. It kind of gives a cool effect. And if you look behind my bottle of Candy 2.0 paint, there's a little glass bowl, and that has lacquer thinner in it. I'm going to use lacquer thinner coming up with when I do the grill in the front. Here's me using a magnifier because, sometimes your eyes just get a little wonky when you do this work. So I'm using some of this cheap spray paint, enamel spray paint, just putting some in a cup. I'm going to use my brush and some paint thinner to thin the paint out a little bit so it kind of runs into the grill. And it's not a solid black. It's kind of like a wash, like if you're doing weathering. So the chrome portions of the grill still shine through. And it's not a solid black. It doesn't look like it's just a big splash of black paint. And then I'm taking some more of the Candy 2.0 because there's a little red badge on the Cougar grill. At least I believe it was red. It may have been blue, but this one's going to be red. So I'm painting that little tiny badge with some of the Candy 2.0 and then going back over with some of the black paint to trim it out and make sure it's kind of like coloring in the lines. And then doing some more touch-up on the grill. It's a very painstaking thing for me. I really try to do this as best as I can because it's so minuscule and tiny. So here's our assembly, and I'm just using some quick seal silicone lubricant, silicone adhesive, just in case 50 years from now somebody wants to take this car apart. It'll be easy to remove the window without, won't have to have like crazy glue or anything. So it'll perform an adhesion, but it'll be easy to remove should somebody want to redo it 50 years from now. Our wheels, sliding them back onto the hubs. These are from Bright Vision. They have a great line of products. And here we are putting our base and attaching it to the body. A couple of screws. The windshield started to sag a little bit, so I had to use a toothpick, and I think I did it once again towards the end here to push the window up into the roof of the car to make sure it stayed. So giving it a once over before I put the final screw in. And we'll call this one done. And she's ready to rock and roll. She's a clean machine. I love the blue. And that Spectra flame shines through my electroplated zinc process. It looks pretty good. I didn't sacrifice too much of the body line or dig too deep into the body when I was sanding it to prep it, so I will have to adjust these wheels. You can see the left wheel in the rear is needs to be propped up a little. And then the front left or front right needs to be brought up a little. But there she is. I think it's a 69 Custom Cougar in ice blue. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everybody is well. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave comments. Let me know what you think. And don't forget to go and look for the list of the 3 blind mice build for August. And check that out too and see everybody who's involved. So until the next video, guys, I'll see you soon. And thanks a lot for watching.